Hi, my name is Jimmy Caparelli. I'm Robert's cousin on his mom's side. My mom and Aunt Sil were sisters. I want to tell a quick story, just to get it on the record. About 10 years ago, I was out visiting my brother in Phoenix, and Robert and Karen were out there, so we went to their house to visit. And Robert and I decided to go to Scottsdale to the casino one night. So I jumped in his big ride with him. It was Lincoln, and we're driving down the highway towards the casino. And he said to me, "Hey, Jim, you got to be careful on these roads because there's police everywhere, and they got these cameras. They take your picture when you're speeding." Boom! A minute later, a big flash came up. We both went, what the hell happened? It was the funniest thing. So we said, you know what? I think they got us. We go back home. We went to the casino. We go back home. About a month later, Karen gets this thing in the mail. It's a picture of me and Robert with our big mouths open, looking at the camera that got us for speeding. It was so funny. I got to tell you. Karen put it on the refrigerator for like the next 6 months, and all Robert could say was, "Gee, that was better than my wedding picture," he said. Funniest thing that ever happened. Robert, Sharon and I love you. Karen, we love you, and we're going to miss you. Take care.
Hi, I'm Frank Caparelli. I'm Robert's first cousin. Our mothers are sisters. And Robert and I had lunch and dinner together 2 times a year, every year for a very, very long time. There are hundreds of stories that I could tell. One of my favorites is a story. We went to Valente's restaurant and we were having a drink. And the waitress was very, very slow. And Robert called her over, and it took her about 10 minutes to get there. And we ordered a drink, and the drink came to the table about 10 minutes after that, and Robert gave her $5 for the drink and $5 for her. He said, "You did such a good job, I want you to take the rest of the day off with pay." About 15 minutes later, we were looking for the waitress to come and bring us another drink. No waitress. We looked all around. We called the manager. The manager said, "I seen her 15 minutes ago. I haven't seen her since." We have to assume she did, in fact, take the rest of the day off with pay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gail Pinnell. I'm Aunt Teresa's daughter, middle daughter. And Robert has been living at my mom's house for the past 2.5 years. And I have a grandson who goes to school near my mom's house, so she picks him up every day after school, and I would come home after my work and I would have dinner with my mom and Walter, Eden, and Robert every night. I would be dragging home from work, depressed, walk in the house. Robert would, his smile and his laughter and his stories would just pull me right out of a bad day. But anyway, when I lived with my mom, she never cooked like she cooked for Robert. So Mom, it's your turn to tell a story. Aunt Teresa.
Hi, I'm Aunt Teresa, and Robert lived with me for 2.5 years. He was a very funny man, and he just brought life to us. And one day I said to him, I went to the doctor says you don't look like you're 86, and Robert said you don't act it either. So I said, well, I take that a compliment, I hope. But anyway, Karen, let me tell you about Karen. One day she came to pick me up. We were going out shopping, and I said, Karen, I just lost the diamond out of my ring. Can you help me find it? And Karen said, okay. She went to the car, came upstairs, and said, here's your diamond. Anyway, both
They were
good people.
both angels on this earth.
Yeah.
And Robert was the son my mom never had. and we miss him every day. I drive to my mom's house, and there's no more food on the table.
Because I would cook for Robert only. No,
And I
there-
cry every day I
Yeah.
come home. I miss his smiling, loving face, and God bless. We were blessed by Robert and
Yeah.
Karen.
Yeah, I will miss him all my life. It's sad. Too young they went, but they're in a good place. God bless Robert and Karen.
I can't tell you how many memories I have of Robert. I love my cousin, and I'm sorry?
Introduce yourself.
I'm Joanne Linwall, Scott Linwall, and Walter Walsh, my stepdad. We have had so many memories, so many good times with Robert, but one that just comes to mind was about 3 months ago in the end of October. We had a wedding at my house, and Robert, I had the pleasure of sitting next to Robert that evening at the wedding, and we had a wonderful time, like old memories.
Dancing all night,
And drinking all night.
dancing all night, and I ended up putting my jacket down right next to Robert's jacket, and our ties were next to each other. And when it was time to go home, he put my jacket and tie on.
My son comes into the living room and says, "Where's my jacket and tie, Mom?" I said, "I don't know." Robert has Scott's jacket and tie on, and Scott has Robert's jacket and tie
I
on.
almost had to wrestle him for the jacket back before he got in his Uber ride home.
It was a lot of fun, and we'll always remember those fun moments, and I'll always remember raising our children together.
I think
Karen and Robert, and Jeffrey and Bobby, and my husband Jimmy and I with Scott and Mark.
he finally gave me the jacket back, and he said, "I'm sorry, I just got all fired up."
Where was he going after he had the jacket on?
Your house.
He's going to my house, right? By Uber.
And Walter misses dinners with Robert. The conversation was never boring.
No, Robert was. He just mentioned something about going to sleep. Well, we would have dinner, and then sometimes he would doze off a little bit. So I just turned the lights off, so he could sleep. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with Robert.
That'd truly be missed.
2.5 years.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Donna, Robert's first cousin, and Robert was a very special man. He was always doing things to help people, and he loved parties. Last year on my birthday, he came to my apartment and he brought his little grill and he did all the hamburgers and hot dogs for the party. Always willing to help and be kind and thoughtful, and it was great always just to have him in your presence. Because wherever he was, he made you feel special. And that's one of my good memories of Robert, among many, many.
Hi, I'm Sarah Blosser. I'm Donna's daughter and Teresa Walsh's or Testa's granddaughter. I really had the pleasure of getting to spend time with Robert at different family events, and he's just, as everyone has probably said on this camera 100 times already, he's a wonderful man and so full of life and happy. Yeah, I think ironically this past year I got to spend the most time with him, and he was at my birthday, and it was a really special occasion. I see you crying. Sorry. Can we do it again? No? Okay. Yeah, so crying aside, my cousin Kenzie got married this past year, and Robert came to the wedding. Karen was out in Arizona, and it was a really special night, and everyone says, he had lots to drink, had a lot of fun, and I ended up dancing with him for the entire night, and it was just really fun and refreshing to, have fun with someone in our family that I don't get to see too often. But he just really showed, that age doesn't matter. You can have as much fun as you want for as long as you want. And it was just, great to spend that time with him. And then really funny part of the night, we were both wasted in the Uber going home, and he's like, oh, I should have an Uber account. And I'm like, okay, I'll help you set one up. And so I'm trying to type his email in. We kept messing it up. Nothing worked. We're both falling over in the back of the cab. It was really just a funny, memorable occasion. But that night, the Uber driver dropped him off, and he tipped him $50. And that, again, just kind of exemplifies what Robert's like, which is just this giving, caring person that, no matter what he had, he would give it all. And, I talk a lot about Robert. I haven't seen Karen in many years, but I do have really fond memories of her with my Grandma Terry in their house in on Wolf Pit Avenue. And I really admired Karen for her strong opinions and how she was never afraid to say her mind. And so, I always look up to her for that, for being a really strong woman that clearly the community really loved and went around. So I just want to say I'll miss them both. It was really good to get to know them when I could. But so thanks.
So where to start? So I'm Joe Shiano III, or Joe the Turd, as you and my father say it. I had the luxury of, or liberty of, calling you my godfather. So it's hard to be up here and imagine both of you not being here right now, and you're deeply missed. And I just have so many great memories of growing up with you and the family, with Jeff and Bobby, Karen at the beach house, dinners at our house, just hanging out overall. Awesome times that, deeply missed. But we love you. Miss you both more than you can even imagine. I'm so thankful to have you as a godfather and to call you Uncle Robert and Aunt Karen. I'm glad that you got to meet my kids, Alyssa and Devin, and be a part of their growing up and mine, 40 years of my life. So I'm going to keep it short because I know people want to talk, but we love you, we miss you, and thanks for taking the time to listen to us.
I'm Pete Kokia. I've been friends of the Testas for many years. We were business partners at Cobb's Mill, and we did a lot of socializing together. One little funny story, I wasn't there, but it was related to me by one of my friends. Bob and Karen used to enjoy a cocktail now and then. And apparently one night they were leaving the Midtown restaurant along with another friend, Paulie Moscato. And as they were leaving the restaurant, I guess they were kind of stumbling along, and all of a sudden, Bobby stopped, looked at Karen, and said, "Karen, my reputation, I have a reputation to uphold." And that was Bob's sense of humor and Karen's sense of humor. They were wonderful people, they were delightful people to be with, and we're going to miss them dearly.
Hi, I'm Tom. You know me. I knew Bob and Karen. Bob was a childhood friend. Since I was 14, I knew Bob. I was 21 when I met Karen. And they're both close and dear friends to me. Bob's been my best friend forever and always will be. Little funny story I have. When we got out of the service, I was at Bob's house at a party. And we were down in the basement playing pool. Other people were dancing upstairs and everything. And the police came to the house and knocked on the door. And Karen yelled down, "Robert, police are here. You better get up here." So me and Robert walked up to the front door. And the police officer said to Robert, he said, "Mr. Testa, if we have to come back here, somebody's going to jail." Well, Bob replied to the officer, "No problem, officer. I'll have my wife make sure her bags are packed. So that's all I wanted to say. I had many more stories about them, but they're my friends forever. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Elena Sheehan, John's wife. I know Karen and Robert through Dan and Gabe, my brother and sister-in-law, and I just want to tell you, I'm sorry for your loss, but it's not just yours, it's all of us here. We all have a special connection with them. Mine is, I have to tell you, a story that I have that's special between me and Robert. He came into NORWALK Radiology one time when I was working there. I called him back. He was there for just something simple like a chest x-ray, I don't remember, but I brought him back to the dressing room and Robert, I'm gonna do chest x-ray. He said, oh, but Robert, there's something else. That your doctor called up and said that he wants us to do a barium enema while you're here. And of course, you know how he's starting to freak. And I said, so I brought him in the dressing room and I said, just take off your pants. And I had the enema tip in my hand, and I just wish you guys were there to see his face and how he freaked out about that. It was great. I'll never forget it. And I had the enema tip in my hand. I said, don't worry, Robert, I'm very gentle, I've been told. He just went nuts. Oh, the poor guy. Go ahead, take your pants off. The poor guy. Anyway, that was my special story about Robert. And John's going to tell you about the prairie dog poop that we got from Karen.
Hello, I'm John Sheehan, and I belong to her. I've known Robert since kindergarten. We were in kindergarten class together, and then he disappeared. The next time I saw him was 26 years late, no, approximately 21 years later. I was in the Air Force at Springfield, Mass, and in the mess hall, and somebody sat across the table from me, and I looked at the name tag, and it was Testa. And if you know Robert, you know that Robert looks never really changed. Well, that was the first time in 26 years. After that, we bumped into each other a few times. I actually ended up working for him. Karen and I hit it off famously because I used to rag her about being from North Dakota, and the only thing that they had there was prairie dogs. She, in turn, next trip there, sent me a bag of prairie dog poop, a Ziploc. Let's see. My favorite thing about Robert was when they were living on Winfield Street and Jeff and Bobby were young. Robert was sitting at the table. The two boys had brought dinosaur models, and RT was going to put it together for them. Well, he opened the boxes, did not look at the directions, built two complete dinosaurs that looked like dinosaurs, but nobody could identify what kind of dinosaurs they were. With the leftover parts that he had, he built a third dinosaur that looked like a dinosaur. Only Robert. That's it. That's all I could say.
We loved your parents, and I'm sorry about your loss, but it's not just yours. We really feel it too. Love you guys.
Hi, I'm Joe Testa. I'm Robert Testa's cousin. When we were young, Robert and I were very close. In fact, when we were about to be confirmed, Robert had this idea that we should take each other's confirmation names from our first names, such that Robert would become Robert Joseph and I would become Joseph Robert. I like the idea, not only because it bonded us forever, but also because Robert always seemed more experienced, more daring, and larger than life when we were kids, even though I was almost a year older than him. For instance, by age 10, when other kids were riding bikes, Robert was already able to navigate his father's cabin cruiser and help to park his father's MG sports car, at least on one occasion, on his father's concrete porch outside beside the family house. Robert was very adventurous. He often played on the train tracks near the neighborhood on Testa Place, or he was climbing trees like a monkey, although once he did have to wear casts on both of his arms after he fell out of a tree when a branch broke that he was on. In elementary school, Robert could already do all of the popular fast and slow rock and roll dances with our Aunt Nancy, while I felt rather bashful and awkward to dance. By the time Robert was 12, he was already going out with girls, including one with the rather memorable name of Trixie, while many boys and boys that age were already feeling too shy to even talk to girls at that age. Robert and I got into quite a bit of trouble as youngsters. For example, while sneaking around in our grandparents' house on Testa Place, Robert once twisted open the spout on a large wine barrel to take a sip of Grandpa's homemade wine. When he couldn't turn the spout back off, he panicked, and we started screaming and shouting, alerting the adults upstairs. Fortunately, the adults thought our antics were kind of funny, in particular because our grandparents were always very forgiving when it came to anything that was done by their grandchildren. Another time on Testa Place, Robert took out his father's unloaded military rifle, presumably a military keepsake, possibly one that he absconded. He mounted a covered bayonet on the rifle and took it out of the house, and the two of us were needed to carry it as we chased the kid up the hill onto Ely Avenue. Apparently Robert didn't like the outsider hanging around on our street. Even at the age of 7, Robert was already showing signs of starting on the road to becoming a builder, using old lumber and branches from a tree to construct a bridge across a brook behind Testa Place. His bridge allowed us to have a shortcut to our grandparents' house after they had moved up the hill to Ely Avenue. I found out that Robert was 7 because, according to the internet, in October of 1955, 14 inches of tropical rain storm had caused the most severe damage of any flood in the history of Norwalk, Connecticut. As a result, Robert's bridge had floated away. When he finally did find it, he suggested that we use it as a raft, sort of like Huckleberry Finn in Mark Twain's novels. But when he used a pole to push the raft forward, I ended up falling off the back end of the raft and aspirated cold, dirty water, and a few weeks later, I was hospitalized with double pneumonia. When Robert moved to East Norwalk, we found multiple ways to still get into trouble. For example, on one occasion, Robert took me for a ride on his go-kart on Saugatuck Avenue, which is a main road on the way to Westport, Connecticut, and we were promptly picked up by the local police. Needless to say, Robert's mother, Aunt Sylvia, was furious with Robert, and she started screaming and yelling at him, I think partly to impress the police that she was a good mother who would scold the parents and that no one needed to get arrested. Robert's budding contractor ways also continued in East Norwalk, where he built several tree forts as well as a long, meandering underground tunnel across the backyard and down the hill to the train tracks that were set below. Again, he had some fascination with train tracks, as you can see. When my family moved to Richfield, Connecticut, I built simple stuff in shop, like a food tray. But my mom showed me something in the Norwalk Hour a year later about Robert having built a professional-looking desk that even had a set of drawers in it. When Robert slept over our house, in our new house when we first moved to Richfield, he helped my dad and I clear wild bushes and shrubs from our new property. We created a pile that was at least 10 feet high, and we stood on top of it, arm in arm, actually arms around each other's shoulders, so proud of it. And at that point, we had some pictures taken of us, but little did I know that Robert had gone on and cut down a couple of trees on private property nearby. As you might imagine, my dad wasn't too pleased about that, and somehow I ended up getting blamed for it. Robert and I didn't see each other much during high school as we went our separate ways. He went on to vocational school, and I went on to an academic track. But we did see each other when we got married. We both got married in September of 1968. Both fortunate enough to find partners who were very supportive and helped turn two rather troublemaking young men into real men who were reasonably responsible and bringing out the best in us. During our late 20s and 30s, my wife Priscilla and I were fortunate enough to have the chance to get together with Robert and Karen from time to time, often at their beach house. Karen and Robert were always witty, always kind, and very fun-loving hosts. Robert and I shared an unspoken, lifelong bond that was inspired by our hardworking Testa family roots that traced all the way back to Italy. We were similar in having a strong work ethic and a passion to succeed and make a mark in our chosen fields. Robert in construction and me in science. Robert can now rest in peace, having fully achieved his dream of success, not only in his career, but more importantly, in becoming a devoted, caring, and generous husband, father, and beloved relative and friend to many, many people. Thank you. We will miss him dearly.
Okay, I'm Dan Sheehan. This is my wife, Gabriella Sheehan. We have known Robert and Karen since 1970, 1971, forever. We were close friends. Our kids were raised together. Bobby and Jeff. We didn't know Gary until recently, but them and our children were raised together. And we spent a lot of family time together. There's just so many things that happened. It was hard to pick one out, but I guess one thing that would be typical of Robert and Karen would be we were on their personalities and ours and how we got along together. We were at an exclusive wine tasting up in the Finger Lakes about probably, I don't know, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, and it was a private wine tasting. This gentleman was open up. He was a retired accountant from Kodak up in Rochester, New York, and he just bought this winery and vineyards, and we were like the acid test. We were the test program. He had just spent tens of thousands, maybe more than $100,000 in setting up this retail store, and he had never had anybody in. He hadn't opened it yet, and we went up there for an exclusive testing. There was Robert and Karen, there was Gabe and I, and there was another couple. And he had this huge buffet set out for us, and he wanted us to test his wines, and he wanted us to show us his vineyards. Well, we go out there, and he was showing us his electric fence, and Robert walks out there, to keep the deer out. Robert goes out there with his hands folded behind his back, looks at it, and says, "Well, you've got the electrodes set too far apart. The deer are going to be able to get through." This guy, had left everything up to the people who'd set the fence up, and he didn't know anything about it. So right away, he was discouraged. And this guy, I failed to mention, he's Hungarian, and I can say this because I'm Hungarian too. So you have a suicidal tendency to begin with, if things aren't going your way. So this guy, he's already depressed because he's a hunky, and now he has a look of complete despair on his face. So Robert tells him that, makes him think a little bit, but we went inside. Now we're going to do the actual wine tasting. He puts his wines out on the table, and I'm going to cut it short. I'm not even going to go into what his wife was doing and saying. But he's got this, he's got the Chardonnay and everything, so you can clear your palate before you drink the other wines. He had the cheeses set out. He had everything was proper. Everything was beautiful. He had the paperwork set out so that you could taste the wine, you could swish it, you could sniff it, you could smell it, and you could write down does it smell or taste like wet dog, freshly tarred road, or whatever, dead coyote, whatever. So we're tasting the wine, and Robert is swishing the wine in his mouth. He's swishing, he's sniffing, he's testing the palate. Karen's looking at him, and she finally says, "Robert, what in the hell are you doing? You just had a sinus operation and you can't taste a damn thing. What are you doing?" And this guy just about went out of his mind. And I'll leave it at that. That was just the personality of Robert and Karen, and how they interacted. Just a little example, and how they caught you by surprise. You got blindsided by some of the stuff that happened. They were always fun. They were great. They were fantastic friends. And this is a Hungarian thing too. We love them, we miss them. Okay, that's it.
Hi, my name is Richard Bonifant, and I'm a good friend of Bob Testa's. And Karen was a sweetheart, and I feel really bad about what happened. I want to say that he was one of the best guys you could ever meet. And the reason why I'm holding this wine here, because that's a symbol of our friendship. I used to love hanging out and drinking some wine with you, buddy. I just want to say that you left me hanging. Now I got to figure out how to get that sewer line of mine fixed that you promised to come over. But we'll forgive you, I guess, because nothing I can do about that. Hey, you got 3 nice kids, and they did a real good job here, all right? And the ceremony and the services were beautiful, all right? Bob, I miss you a lot, and from all your wine drinking buddies, here's to you, bud. Bye.
Hi, I'm Brianna. I am Robert's Aunt Teresa's granddaughter, and my son Eden and my niece Oceana are Robert's Aunt Teresa's great-grandchildren. And my son Eden got to become very close to Robert and Karen, and they were always very loving and warm and caring for all of us. And Eden had the opportunity to, what did Robert let you drive on, Eden?
He let me drive a
camera.
Robert let me go in his backhoe and he drove around. He gave me lots of arrowheads.
Where were
And,
they from?
The Arrowheads were from Arizona. And
He loved you very much.
he loved me very much. And he always sat with us at dinner. And it was good.
And we always danced with Robert at parties, and Karen was always just so loving to us, and so we'll miss them a lot. Thank you.
My name is Del Rey, and I am Karen's niece, and I'll tell you a favorite story that my family has about Karen and Robert. We love to play games, and one of their favorite games was Outburst, and it was always boys versus girls, or men versus women. And Karen loved to win, and so we would play sometimes hours of this game. And if you've never played Outburst, it's just a game where you have to list names of things. So your competing team will say, their cards, and they'll say list 10 vegetables that start with the letter S. And that was the card we happened to give them in that day. And, they're yelling squash, and they're coming up with all these S words. And Robert's word for vegetable was asparagus. And Karen looked at him and said, "Asparagus, Robert? Asparagus is a vegetable that starts with an S?" And Robert, of course, probably had never seen it in writing because, as Karen said, he's never been in a grocery store in his life. But that is our family joke. So every time we play Outburst now, someone always has to yell the word asparagus, no matter what the clue is, to make sure that everybody remembers Robert. That's it.
I didn't know you were Russian. So, hi everybody, this time with sound. So I'm Bobby Testa, so I am the youngest of the 3 sons. And I just wanted to say, Mom and Dad, love you, miss you very much. And I wanted to introduce you to my good friends down in New Jersey when I lived in Wayne, New Jersey. And pass the mic.
Hi, Richard Hernandez. I am a part of the Kent Ave family, which is part of these two over here next to me. And had wonderful times with Babalushki, and a wonderful man. Can't wait to see him again. And we got to spend more times together. Babalushki over here. Hold on. And I'm passing the mic down.
And I'm Kim Hernandez. I'm just happy to be here. And I wish everybody well.
We're good.
And we're great. She's very happy to be here, too.
I'm happy to be here as well.
Me 3.
Us 3.
I am Kaylee.
Kaylee is the daughter of Jeffrey and Jessica Testa. My name is Elissa, formerly Steinert, now Morena. I'm Jessica's best friend from high school. Kaylee, do you want to tell your story first? You don't want to? You want me to go first? Okay. I can't remember exactly when I first met Robert and Karen. It was quite some time ago. I'm going to say probably 20-some years. I do have very good memories of visiting Jessica and Jeffrey when they lived in Connecticut. And we did go to the beach house, and I do remember very good times playing cards and drinking Sambuca with Robert. At one point, I remember Robert asking me, I am actually mostly of German heritage, although recently I found out I'm 9% Italian, but I love Sambuca. And I remember at one point Robert asked me, "Are you sure you're not Italian?" Because I could keep up with him. So many good memories of just seeing them at Jessica and Jeffrey's house. They're so dearly missed. Kaylee, do you want to tell your story now?
I do have really great memories of Grandma Testa and Grandpa Testa. They are really wonderful, and I wish they never died in first place. And my story here today is that I would always play because I like playing songs on my microphone at home to Grandma and Grandpa. When they were first at my house, I sing the song and then until Grandma and Grandpa died. So, and then I have really great memories of Grandma and Grandpa. They went to the beach house with my sister and brother when they were very young, and my uncle and Uncle Rob always my Uncle Rob always loved to go play with drink alcohol with Grandma and Grandpa. Well, sometimes until Grandma died, then they first had a broken leg until she died. And now she's dug up, and now we all care since we all wish that she never died in first place. And she was so great, she was wonderful, and she was pretty and handsome.
You all set, honey? Thank you so much.
And I love Robert and what's Grandma's name? Karen. Robert and Karen are my favorite Grandma and Grandpa forever.
I'm Abby Testa. I was their granddaughter. My grandma would always tell me stories about like what she had done and like where she had went, and like just funny stories about other people, and she always made me laugh, and it was great. And my grandpa would always be around to like add stuff to the stories with his really loud voice, and it was pretty cool, I guess. Yeah, I really miss them. All right, I'm done.
Hi, I'm Nathan Testa. I'm their grandson, and I would like to tell you about our summers up there. So, usually every summer, whenever we go up there, they let us we start a garden with Grandma and plant flowers with Grandma, and then with Grandpa, I go into the shed or the whatever they're called, and we usually go in there to go get the go-kart started, and then we would play on that, and then we would just do fun stuff. And then Grandma always at night would always tell stories about how, let's say she made $100 at the casino or 300, or how Grandpa ran away from snakes. He was always afraid of snakes, though. Or about how she got her cars or her house, and just tell us the generation about the farmhouse. And she would always just have something for us to do.
Well, Grandma Testa were very great. They were the greatest Grandma and Grandpa. But now, I just like, because they just always loved it. Grandma always loves to tickle me. But now, it's really sad because they died. So they only have nothing to eat or nothing all day. And now we love to say goodbye to them. and now they're dead, and now we feel really bad for them. But sometimes they kind of come, but God will take good care of them and God is the best God ever. And we love Jesus too. And now Grandma and Grandpa in coffins, and we really wish that they never died. I love you, Grandma Testa and Grandpa Testa.